In order to be the most successful on Wix Studio, you have to understand advanced sizing. And once you understand this, it's going to change how you view creating layouts inside of Wix Studio because you'll have 100% control over everything. So this is my website here, and I'm going to show you what advanced sizing is and how to use it. So I have this section here called perfect spacing every time. And so by default, I don't have advanced sizing turned on. Over here on the right-hand side of the size panel, this is the default setting that you get. And I'm on my section here just to show you what element I'm editing. So this is my section grid. And if I turn advanced sizing on by clicking this, and then I do advanced settings, now I have advanced sizing turned on, and it changes how my section functions. So right now my height is set to auto, my min height is none, my max height is none. And one real quick point about the advanced sizing. If it's in blue, you can edit it. You can customize it and change it. For example, I could set a min height of pixels if I want to. If it's grayed out, that means you cannot edit it. So this section can't have a minimum width. But what I have down here is more settings. So I have this min-max set to auto and to auto. And I'll show you an example of this, how it works well first, and then I'll show you what would happen if you were starting without this turned on. So right now, if I change the way that this functions, this cell will hug this text. So you can see that as I'm hitting enter, it's kind of changing based on the height is changing based on those changes. That's because I have it set to auto. And so when I make a change, it's going to set the height here at the section grid for row number 1, which is this first cell. And if I hover over it, that's how I know is set to auto. So I can change this. If I wanted to have a minimum size for the section, like let's say I wanted it to be 500 pixels, then it will never be smaller than 500 pixels. So if I change this back to auto, then it's going to hug this element. And so that's what I want for this top section, this top cell, is I just want it to hug this title and make sure that it's going to change with that hover. Now on the image side, I don't want the image to be smaller than a certain size. For example, if it looks like this, it's too small, you can't really see the image. I want you to see more of the image. And actually, I might want it to be 600 pixels to be more square than kind of a rectangle shape. So that if I set that minimum pixels to 600, it's never going to go smaller than the 600 pixels. And then in the column section, this is just set to 1FR, 1 fraction, because it's going to be almost like 100% of the width. So that's how I get complete control over my sections. And if we go look at this on mobile, it also has the 600 pixels. So I could change this here on mobile to 400. And it looks a little bit better, but I have complete control over sizing. Now let me show you what would happen if you don't have this set up this way. So I'm going to add a new section here. I'm just going to do a grid layout and do this grid. And then I'll add my title from a quick add. And then I'll add an image to my second one, and I'll stretch it. So if you look at what's happening here, I have my default settings on. These are grayed out. And so if I go to my section grid, though, they should come back a little bit. Yeah, so I can change the height of my section here, my responsive behavior. I still have these rows here, but I don't have as much flexibility on what is happening here. I can only change a few things. And like I said before, it's not hugging my title. So I have to kind of manually go in and stretch this. And then still, it's not even going to hug my title perfectly. So I'll show you with the padding on and everything so you can see the full example. But if I go here and I do 6%, 6%. So I'm adding some padding to my section. My gap in between my cells is going to be 40 pixels. So right here. But still, if I change this, it's not really hugging this at all. And so if I change this to advanced settings, then I actually just changed my text element. Let me go back to my section grid is what I want to change. You have to make sure you're editing the right element. So I change this to advanced settings. And then on my height on my first row, now when I look at it, I have way more options here. And as soon as I turn this to auto, it's going to hug this text. And then of course I can still hug the text here or center the text. So the other thing I can do is I can do this for all the elements. So if I want this to be on the text and I can set this to 100% width, it's going to fill this section of my cell no matter how big my cell is. And then if I center it, it's good to go. And then like I said before, if I change this, if I add more text, it's going to always kind of hug that title. So that's how I want it there. And then on my image, since my image here is set to stretch, then I need to go back to my section grid. And this is where I set that min max. And so for me, I want it to be pixels. I want it to be 500 pixels. And so now it's going to auto size. So this is how you get these layouts that are going to be more flexible, but also give you full control on how they behave and how they behave across all devices. So here, this is doing the same exact thing. There's still 40 pixels, I believe, in between here. This is the same exact size, and you can see it's not perfect yet, but I have way more control over it than I would if I didn't do it this way, if I just used the default settings. So I can change this here. I can make my title, instead of scale text, let's see, I can make this 32 pixels. And so now I have full control. Maybe this is too big of a gap on mobile. So now I'm changing this to 24 pixels or something like that. And then I have my section. And then here on my padding, I might actually change this on mobile to this, to viewport width would be 8. And then pixels here would be 40. So I might get a section that looks like this on mobile. If I could type the right number, here we go. So like this, and I have complete control over how it functions now. So let me show you one that is going to be a little bit more complex and why this becomes so important. So right now in this section, I have a repeater, and then inside of the repeater, I have a grid. So I have a CSS grid, and you can see that right now it's changed 1 to 1. It should actually be 2 to 1. And so this image should be filling out that first grid. This should be down in that second grid down here. And so this isn't really a video about CSS grid, but this is just more complex to say that I'm using a grid within a repeater to kind of lay out this section. So if I don't have advanced sizing turned on, when I go to these other devices, it gets kind of hard to get this exactly how I want it. So as soon as I turn on advanced sizing, right here, advanced settings, so this is just for the image, so you have to be careful what you're editing. I actually want to go back to the item itself and turn on advanced settings there, and then look at what I have. So I have auto, height, and then down here I have my column, which is 1FR, and then my rows. So here's where we're getting into the different things. So if I change this, let's change this to pixels. And let's just say our minimum is 100. And let's see what happens. Okay, so it set this to 100 and it didn't change the image yet. So we have to find the right area to edit for these advanced settings. And this is what you have to do when you work with advanced settings. You want to make sure you're editing the right thing. So it's probably not the repeater because it's all grayed out. It's probably not the section because let's find out what we have here. It's 200 pixels. Let's just set this to auto. So that's going to hug what we have no matter what it is. So now it's set to whatever size this repeater is. So we know it's not the repeater because these are all grayed out. We have our item here, which is set to auto, set to 1 to 2 grid. And this says minimum 100 pixels. The max is set to auto. So I think it could be our image. So if you look at the image here, the min height is 476. So if we change that to something else, this should fix the problem. So if we change this to 300 pixels, then it changed. So you can see what's actually driving the size here. It's actually the image that's driving the size of the repeater. And so this item grid we had here isn't actually driving it, because whether it's 100 or not. So maybe we just set this to auto and see what happens. Nothing happens. And same here, set this to auto. Okay, now it's functioning a lot better because it's hugging this and hugging the image. And so now we're getting closer to the layout that we want. And then on our repeater, we might go in and create some gaps here. So we might actually want like a 24 pixel gap in between these repeaters. But you can see now that we found the correct element to size this. And so a lot of sizing issues come from not knowing what's driving the sizing. And so in this case, it was the image that's driving the sizing. And so now with advanced sizing, we can control this 100% of the time. If you ever want to change the size, we just come back in here and change it to 400 pixels or 350 pixels or some other setting, right? It doesn't have to be pixels. It could be some other setting we want to use. So that's why advanced sizing is so important. And the more you use it, the more you realize that it's pretty much the only way to do every section on your website, because that's the only way you get full control. So let me show you how to turn this on in your website by default. So if you come over here to the top left, there's with the hamburger menu, there is a view, and then you can do sizing preference. And if you change this to always show advanced, no matter what you're editing, it's going to always show advanced. And then the more you get familiar with this, the better it becomes. Because, for example, I might want this to be at 100% width, or I might want it to be 60% width. So you can start to understand how to control width and height and all of those things through these different measurements that Wix has, percentage and pixels and viewport height and viewport width and calculation and max content. The more you play around with this, the better you get at it. And this is the real way to drive layouts that are going to work 100% of the time. And it does take a little bit of discovery to figure out which element is driving the sizing, but it is so much faster to do it this way than to not have the advanced settings turned on. A lot of times, if you have the default settings turned on, they will override the things that you're trying to do. You'll go in here and try to change the elements and they won't change, and it's so frustrating. And so now you can control all of this through the advanced sizing and knowing which element you need to click on. And then it gets so much easier to build these Wix Studio websites. And one other thing that I always do once I have a really good section, or I always try to do, is I'll save this as an asset. So I'll come in here and I'll save it as an asset to one of my libraries so that I can reuse this section. And I want to make sure it's all the way complete, that it's optimized for mobile and for tablet and for all the devices, and it's perfect exactly how I want it. And then once that's ready to go, then I will save this as an asset and reuse it over and over and over again. So I don't have to keep creating these sections every time, because a lot of times sections on websites are pretty similar, just changing out the content. So that's a quick overview on advanced sizing. Of course, it can get kind of technical really fast. And if you don't understand the other basics of Wix Studio, it can be confusing. But if you understand the basics of how the elements work and how the layers panel works over here and how the rest of these things all work together, advanced sizing is going to be a game changer for you. Because I know for me, there were times that I couldn't get my layout to be just right until I started using advanced sizing. And now that I use advanced sizing, I don't ever want to go back to the default settings, because you just get so much more control here than you would if you have the default on. So that's what I have for this video, and I will see you in the next video.